Joining me now is former presidential advisor and New York Times bestselling author who's interviewed 6 presidents, including President Trump, penning inside Trump's White House the real story of his presidency, Doug Wead. Doug, I am so happy to have you with us. I have read all your Trump books, and it's just so wonderful to have you here because I will remember when you were writing this, you talk about actually seeing the letters, between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. And I want to get your take on this. Kim Jong-un isn't talking to the Biden administration, and the Biden administration is acting like, oh yeah, that's just the same under Trump. And we're all like, wait, we had 4 years of peace under President Trump. Tell us why there's a difference now that Biden is back in the White House.
Yeah, I think people underestimated, the national media especially underestimated how unique the president's relationship was with Kim Jong-un. It was, as you said, many letters. I was able to sit in a separate room in the White House where the president allowed me to take my time to read them. And as you read through the letters, they were in Korean, of course, but they were translated, and all the official foils and the ribbons that they have in their correspondence. I came away with the feeling that Kim Jong-un was struck by Donald Trump. There was some magic there. He likes bad boys. Dennis Rodman, the basketball player, the more Dennis Rodman was diminished, the more Kim Jong-un was fascinated. And the same with Donald Trump. I think that the media underestimated how struck Kim Jong-un was by Trump. There was almost a father-son relationship, too. And Trump really worked that to de-escalate. There was going to be war. There's no question. Yeah, in fact, Obama said to Trump privately when they met during transition, you will have a war with Kim Jong-un on your watch. And Trump avoided that. It's so true when you say that, because I think everybody forgets we were about to head to war with North Korea. I mean, we had peace for the first time under President Trump. We were in wars with all these other presidents. And as a presidential historian, you really got to see the different approach. The media and even the establishment, they never quite understood just what a world leader President Trump was in actually working with these leaders to get peace. Even dictators, I mean, everyone looks at it, the media, oh, isn't that bad? You're friendly with the dictator. He got along. We aren't in war. I think that's a success there because Kim Jong-un, like you said, with Obama, we were really heading to war. And it's like now that Biden's back, do you think that there's some of that kind of remaining where Kim Jong-un's going back and saying he hated, Obama during the Obama years, and he kind of sees Biden as the same way as Obama? Well, there's definitely some magic to what Trump was doing that's underestimated, no question about it. I mean, stop and think of this, Natalie. In the last 40 years, Trump is the first president not to have invaded somebody. That's pretty remarkable. We've had now 6 presidents who started a war until Donald Trump came. Peace and prosperity is the gold standard for a president. That's not an accident of history. That shows a lot of very hard work. I mean, you look at NATO, you notice Joe Biden isn't calling a press conference and giving back all that money to those NATO nations, but they excoriated President Trump because he wanted NATO nations to pay what they promised to pay to strengthen NATO. So he blew it up and he rebuilt it, which is typical style of Donald Trump. It's true. And I mean, the consequences speak for themselves. We did have peace where it's like now, I mean, Biden's hardly in office for 40 days. And all of a sudden you hear about bombing in Syria again. And you're just like, wait a second. I think a lot of us took for granted just how much peace we actually had with President Trump. The media never talked about it. They were always fixated on one rabbit trail after another, one witch hunt after another. But President Trump really was a diplomat. I mean, they might not have liked his style, Rocket Man, but hey, it worked. They had no war. I mean, we were hearing that South Korea, that was going to be a really dangerous situation there where millions could die. I mean, you hear them targeting New York and LA. I mean, we remember the news cycle, the real story of what was going on, even though the narrative has changed. But I also want to ask you also, not just on North Korea, but as a historian, when you saw what happened post January 6th, when all of a sudden the social media giants, big tech, start deleting President Trump's Twitter account, where that really is like a historical record there, where you had all of his
rallies, even when you look at his communications back in terms of tweeting at Kim Jong-un or all the different world leaders, NATO, when you look at it all, that really was a historical record that all of a sudden is erased. It's gone. I mean, YouTube, the different videos from every rally, it's gone. As a historian, they're trying to erase the Trump presidency. What do you see as the lasting accomplishment of the Trump administration that, as much as it can try to delete, that will really be there still forever, regardless of if he's on Twitter or not?
Well, boy, there's a lot to unpackage there. I will say in the Soviet Union, there was a common expression among the people. They said, the past is unpredictable. Usually you say the future is unpredictable, but they would say the past is unpredictable because the Soviet communist government were constantly censoring and rewriting what happened in the past. And that's what big tech is trying to do with Trump. It's actually rather embarrassing, the accomplishments. 6 presidents tried to find energy independence for the United States. Only Trump did it. And all the presidents promised peace in the Middle East and tried to do it and couldn't. 5 presidents promised to move that embassy to Jerusalem. In fact, George W. Bush said, I'm going to do it on day 1. He was so angry at Clinton. But in 8 years, he never did it. And you could go on and on. I mean, it used to drive the Democrats up the wall when Trump would say, I've done more for African Americans than any president since Abraham Lincoln. But it was true, and it was humiliating to the Democrats who wanted to do those things. They wanted prison reform. George W. Bush spent 8 years promising prison reform, and he was praised simply because he promised it. But it took Donald Trump to get it. So, yes, they've got Trump on their brain, and they want to get him out. And so that's why they're totally still haunted by Donald Trump and preoccupied with him, and they want to bury him, and they can't.
It's true. It's going to backfire. Listen, I want to have you back on to talk more about the censorship that's going on, because I think a lot of history, people think, oh, history isn't interesting. But as a historian, you are fascinating, and the books that you've written that I've read are just fascinating. The only real authorized history of the Trump White House, the real story, and we're going to have you back on. So thank you so much, Doug, for being with us today.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for having me.
And Doug Weed, your excellent service in government at the White House and in the private sector.
I think it'll depend a lot on the president. And I went into the Oval Office, and Barbara was there. Jared Kushner said to me, and I've seen that all through history, they want cheap labor.
And I mean really behind the scenes. But he is respected by everybody. So he had access to everybody.